Alrighty, welcome back to the weight room. Thanks for tuning in again today. We are talking to guest Daniel Disney. We're going to be talking about strength conditioning. He is the strength conditioning, assistant strength and conditioning coach at the University of Southern Mississippi. So we're going to be talking about all that good stuff. We're going to be talking about a little bit about his past, how he got into the industry, into the field of strength conditioning. We're going to talk about kind of what he does on a day-to-day, kind of some big picture stuff as well, and the future of the field. So stay tuned. It's going to be a great episode, great conversation. Hope you pick a little bit of something up that you can maybe use within your field, your career, your life, whatever it is. And before we get started, don't forget to tune in to the weight room Mondays and Thursdays, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, on all the platforms, on YouTube as well. Leave us a rating and review. And other than that, just enjoy the episode. Here we go.
Daniel Disney. I'm an assistant strength coach at the University of Southern Mississippi. I'm in charge of volleyball and beach volleyball, as well as being in charge of a graduate assistant, Kate Kelly, who runs women's tennis and women's golf. So I'm one of multiple full-time strength coaches at USM, and we all kind of operate independently. So we all have our own facilities, so we kind of run ours as one unit. I've been in college strength conditioning since, I want to say 2012 in some capacity. I started out as a Division III undergraduate assistant, as well as doing an internship at Stanford. And I've also had stops at Wofford College, the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, Western Illinois University, Austin Peay State University, and then I came to Southern Miss in July of this past year. So I've been here for going on 6 months now.
How did this interest start up?
I would say, it was like strength conditioning was always an interest of mine, just because I wanted to be an athlete, and I started training because I knew that, I wasn't really talented from a physical aspect, and I wasn't going to be the best athlete. And so I used strength and conditioning as a way to just clear the barriers of entry to sport. So I played football and I wrestled in high school, and I got more into rugby when I got into college. But for me, training just started based off of the fact that I knew that just to have a chance to even see the field, like, I had to be strong, and I had to have that physical aspect that I was missing. I was always undersized. I was a smaller kid. I mean, you can't tell right now, but I'm 5'8" on a good day. So, I always needed that extra edge, and I felt that's what would give it to me. And from there, like, transitioning from me training to me wanting to train other people kind of started my sophomore year in college, when I wasn't real sure what I wanted to do. And I was an exercise science major. I'd actually started out as an athletic training major, and wanted to switch, and realized that wasn't, the path for me. And through, activities in powerlifting, I found EliteFTS.com. And that's how I found out that strength and conditioning was a career. So kind of that shift from me training myself just to even have a chance to play, to realizing this is something I could do for a long time and something I have a passion for. So that's kind of how it all started out.
Gotcha. It's actually funny you mentioned the athletic training to exercise science, because that's the route I took. I initially was in the athletic training. I'm blanking on the word. What's the major? And then I switched over. I was like, well, I don't really want to work so much with the injured population or anything like that. Nothing against it, but just wasn't what I was really interested in. I wanted to kind of optimize performance from a different perspective. So, I switched over. And in your experience with exercise science, was there a bigger emphasis on the clinical side of things than there was more of the sports side of things?
And my undergrad was very balanced. I think there was a lot of kind of aspects of both. I think that there was, a good mix of clinical ex phys and then actual strength and conditioning application. I think that is pretty rare for a lot of programs. I feel like a lot of people and programs do sit on one side of the fence or the other. I went to Bridgewater College. Shout out Bridgewater College for having a program that kind of fit a lot of different people. So I kind of had a good base of both physiology and then the ability to actually apply it in a strength and conditioning realm. And my master's degree was also very similar in that it was kind of suited for choosing your own path and being able to kind of really emphasize what you wanted. So when I did my master's degree, I did a dual emphasis in strength and conditioning and sports psychology. So I kind of covered a lot of different aspects throughout like just my formal education. And then, as a strength coach, you kind of have to do a lot more of your own education in your free time to kind of deep dive into what you really want to know. So I started off with a really good base and then kind of had to just expand out based on, my needs at the time.
Gotcha. Did you ever have any kind of like second thoughts on, or second kind of like maybe a backup to what your initial plan was with strength and conditioning?
Honestly, I didn't. I dabbled in sport coaching a little bit. I coached at my high school that I graduated from, and I coached football for a summer. And I thought that maybe I could be like a dual role sport coach, strength coach. And I can just remember sitting in a meeting, and it was like a Sunday night, and we were having an argument about who was going to start at free safety, and the argument went on for 2 hours, and one person saying the guy's too small, the other guy saying he's not. And then I kind of realized, like, I don't want to deal in playing time. I don't want to deal in those aspects of sport coaching where for me, training people in the weight room is a lot more of things that I'm passionate about, as well as you don't have to deal with those gray areas like you do as a sport coach of deciding who's going to play, being able to manage that roster and things of that nature. So when I decided to fully commit to strength and conditioning, I really didn't have a backup plan, and which is not a good way to go about it, But I genuinely didn't have anything I thought that I could fall back on that I would be good at, right? So I just kind of was like, well, this is my skill set. This is what I've got a knowledge base in, and this is what I care about. So I'm just going to go all in on it. And, I'm here 8, 9 years later, still kind of rolling the dice on myself, I guess.
Yeah. I think as a coach in anything, you kind of are rolling the dice on yourself. And of course you maybe have mentors and you have like educational things that you attend and you have, you have resources such as books and things that you can reference, but you almost are, you're putting your knowledge to the test every single day. And I think that's exciting. And it's also a little bit scary. So did that ever like, or has coaching and as like being a little bit of a leader and get having that ability to be also kind of like a teacher, has that been something that you have had throughout your life? Has it been something that you had to develop more?
Yeah, I mean, I'm naturally super introverted, and I was not someone that was like a vocal leader as an athlete. I was always somebody that was reliable, somebody that you knew was going to do their job and was going to do the best they could at their job. And so not having that extroverted, leadership personality that a lot of strength coaches do have, it took me a while to really develop, the ability to hold a room, the ability to really run a room and do that technical portion of being a strength coach. I never really struggled with the academic portion, the programming, things like that. But it definitely took a lot of practice for me to kind of find my voice and to find, the style of coaching that I wanted to embody. I think that, as a strength coach, it's really important to find mentors that are going to push you to do things the way you want to do them, and not necessarily find people that are looking for more of like a discipleship. I think there's a lot of people that look for, interns and GAs and assistants that are going to do things the way they do them because they think that's the right way to do it. And I've been really fortunate that a lot of the people that I work for push me to be my own coach and be myself in order to actually be able to be effective. So it was definitely a process in terms of developing that ability, which is essential. If you can't run a room, if you can't hold the attention of a group of people is really difficult to do the job. And a lot of the times it's just a matter of being comfortable in your own knowledge and then eventually just practicing speaking in front of people, practicing being in charge. And that comes with time. That's what internships and GA jobs are for, in my opinion. That's a really good time to develop those skills. And to, once you get into a full time role, there's no question in your leadership ability or your ability to operate the program the way that it should be done.
I think it's hard too. When you're in school, like you have a lot of times you have these tests that are like, tell me the answer to this problem. And in a lot of cases it's A, B, it's black and white, it is right or it is wrong. But especially in when it pertains to human beings and when it pertains to, strength conditioning and things like that, it's like there's so many right answers. And there's oftentimes I think at least in my experience, it's almost like, is this the right answer? And then you forget that it's not necessarily about right or wrong. It's, does it fit this situation? Does it fit this person? Did you ever struggle with that kind of especially kind of coming out of school a little bit?
I think I did. I think that, when you come out of school, it's very natural to imitate the things that you've seen, and not necessarily understand, values and principles that are the predecessors to decision making. I think that everybody, when they come out, is kind of an imposter in a way. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just that you only know one style or two styles, and you only know how to solve problems the way the people that you worked with solve problems. So right when I started out, I was basically just trying to be that person in order to solve problems the way they did, which doesn't necessarily fit your context, right? Because even though I was pushed to be myself, I still didn't necessarily find who I was as a coach right away. So the only way to survive and tread water was to imitate what I'd seen. So yeah, you definitely, when you get into situations that are gray area, you can only fall on the experiences you have. So it takes time to get to the point where you can make a decision that's not black and white and that kind of fills context in and allows you to make the right decision. And that's just a matter of time and practice as well, because when you're working with people are complex. You can't really predict what people are going to do or what's going to happen, and sport is chaotic. So trying to live in black and white kind of only lasts for so long. You can only make good decisions in black and white for a short period of time, and eventually you have to learn how to deal with the dynamic nature of human beings and the dynamic nature that is sport and then strength coaching.
Yeah, when you're working with people who some, most of the times look up to you and expect you to have answers and things like that, it can definitely be pretty overwhelming, especially at first, whenever, like you kind of said, you almost feel like an imposter going in there. Who am I to teach these people, that kind of thing. And then you do make a decision, and sometimes it turns out to be good. Probably
Mhm.
most of the times it turns out to be good. Sometimes it doesn't turn out to be good. How did you kind of get over that hump of like, okay, I'm going to make a decision or I'm going to do something that isn't right? And when you didn't do something right, how did you kind of get over that and learn from that?
I mean, I think it's a matter of reflection. You have to sit back and think of the decision you made, why you made it, and kind of be honest with yourself. And at the same time, once you get to a certain point and you've established the things that you value at a high level and the things that really matter to you and the things that matter in the development of a student athlete, your decision making can become a lot more clear. But I think that one thing you can't do as a strength coach is have a feeling of when you make a mistake that the world's crashing down on you, because like people do make mistakes. It's a situation that everyone has in every career path. And honestly, I think that as a strength coach, the pressure to do everything perfectly is going to cause a lot more mistakes than kind of following common sense and just following general rules, and allowing yourself to experiment, because at the end of the day, what we do is experimental. We don't have the answers to everything. And even the textbooks can be wrong. There's a lot of practitioners that are light years ahead of what research is doing. And so when you make a decision and, you deem it to be the wrong decision, you just need to think of, you know, did that decision come from a position of my values or the things I believe in? Did it come from, a gray area context that I hadn't experienced before? And just sit down and think about it and reflect. But you got to have a short memory. If you allow those things to make you feel like you're a bad practitioner, then you're going to have a short career. It's definitely going to be something you have to learn to not be so hard on yourself, because it's not the end of the world if you make a mistake today, because you can always come back around and improve from that.
Yeah, I think confidence is a really big key when it comes to that kind of thing. And, you know, I think it comes through experience. I think confidence comes through experience. And uh, when it comes to like, and you kind of mentioned a little bit there, you're working with people for a set period of time. You're not working typically in a strength conditioning aspect with somebody for more than a few years. And even if you get that team right or that person right or whatever that is, you're going to have new people in. People are flowing in and out. I think that's one of the hardest things about this field, about strength conditioning. And you can have like systems in place and procedures in place to kind of help yourself a little bit, but you're always going to be facing new, unique challenges. Might not really even be the best word, just new and unique people. Everybody is going to respond differently, and everybody has a little bit different past. Everybody has a little bit different potential. So how do you kind of overcome the difference in simply the difference in people? Whenever you feel like you've kind of made a step forward, then it's like, oh well, now I have to take into consideration this new variable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you did mention something important, and that's having systems in place that allow you to navigate those things more efficiently. It's also very helpful that you have an established culture after a while, and you have, an established behavioral standard. So when you have those new people coming in, the returners, the people that have been there for a while, should be able to lead the way in, this is how we do things on a behavioral level. This is how we show up. This is how we work, to kind of save you from having to kind of redefine those things every year, and allow you to really get to the point where you understand each athlete on an individual level. I also think that something that I've had to do over time is kind of learn how I want to run a room that will allow me to make decisions on the fly, and that will allow me to make the best decisions at that time. So, a big piece of kind of what you're talking about is going to be reflected in my coaching style and the way I am on the floor. So, if you come into my weight room, you're going to see that I have a very conversational style. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to talk to my athletes just like I would talk to anyone else, because I need to get as much information as I can. So you won't see me, running around with a towel waved over my head with the music as loud as possible and creating like this inefficient communication system. Because, when you bring in these new people, if you don't have a really good system for communicating at a high level, it can quickly get out of control. And on top of that, I also deal with a lot of international athletes as well. So my communication has to be a lot better, even with them, just because there's a language barrier at times. There's very different cultural values that we run into. So I know that's kind of a all over the place answer, but at the end of the day, I think that you have to make sure that you're designing the entirety of your program and your organization around being able to assimilate people, and to be able to continually kind of upkeep the culture of the program so that you're continually moving forward. And just because you get new people in doesn't mean it's one step back, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think culture, it's such an important aspect, whether you're talking about an individual culture, whether you're talking about, culture of a sports team, a school, a business, whatever it is. And I was actually reading a book by John Calipari,
Mhm.
and he was mentioning culture, and he said, we like to cultivate a certain culture here, but what we try to do is take it to the next level. And I never heard this kind of idea before. He said, culture is something you do in a specific place. It's that culture, it's the business culture, the strength room culture. He said, but what we try to do is take it from a culture to a lifestyle, because a lifestyle is something that you do throughout your whole life, throughout your whole day, whether you're in the classroom or whether you're walking from class to either the weight room or class to the cafeteria, wherever it is. You're that you're creating basically through this culture. You're creating an athlete, or a person who has these things outside of that environment. And I think that's a really cool aspect that you get to do as a strength conditioning coach, is to kind of develop young people and shape them. And because everybody, pretty much most athletes, aren't going on to the next level after college. So what you're doing really is you're shaping their life after sports. And I think that's really a powerful thing that coaches get to do.
Yeah, I agree.
When it comes to that, like, how do you, and I think the strength conditioning room, the weight room, is such a good place to instill education. And obviously you're teaching them not just how to be better athletes, you're teaching them the importance of working out. And do you teach them, and does somebody kind of teach them and go, at least go over kind of like the nutritional side of things, the sleep side of things, like how to kind of take care of their body, obviously for performance, but also just for health in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely important to make sure you have like good lifestyle education and you're able to have those conversations. I think a big piece of that is also knowing the resources that you have available to your organization. Do you have registered dietitians? Do you have people that are more qualified than the strength and conditioning coach to implement those initiatives? I think that's a really big piece that strength coaches need to be aware of and be wary of, because at the end of the day, scope of practice is important. So if you have those resources where an RD is allowed to do a lot more than I am with nutrition, then to make sure that you're kind of the bridge between the athlete and that person, to make sure that athletes know what resources they have available to them. If you don't have those resources, it is important that you can give a basic idea of good ideas, bad ideas for nutrition, sleep importance, things like that. It's also really important that you do a lot of work to make your athletes comfortable talking to you, because that's also how you kind of uncover a lot of misinformation that athletes are on the receiving end of. I think that with the internet, and there's so many influencers and there's so many people producing content on all of these different topics, that a lot of times your athlete will come in with just a piece of information that's not necessarily going to benefit them in the elite performance realm. So you need to be able to make sure that your athletes are able to talk to you and ask you those questions too. So it's kind of a two-way street, where you need to make sure that you're educating them, but you need to make sure that they're also comfortable coming to you as someone that's an authority in those kind of aspects, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think being, having it is like it's a two-way responsibility. You have to obviously build that relationship, and um, that they want to learn more, because it has such the potential to not just, like I was saying, be a performance enhancer, the weight room does, but it also has this ability to instill the importance of health and of fitness and of proper diet. I think it'd be so cool to have more people exposed to that. And obviously we have gym classes and things in elementary school and high school, but certainly it would be cool to kind of get more kids back into sports.
It's important that there are people that are able to translate information from academia to the standard person. You need to be able to take information and help people create habits with it, because at the end of the day, I can push out a flyer that says eating vegetables is important, but at the end of the day, like, your habits are going to be the one thing that kind of determine pretty much everything you do. So it's really important that people are in place and have the knowledge, so that they can take that information and then push it into an actionable thing and not just kind of handing out pamphlets or flyers. You have to be willing to help people create real solutions and make decisions that are actually going to make change and not just spew or regurgitate information.
Kind of going back to your early coaching days, I think when we go, you kind of mentioned it too. You go into strength conditioning, you have this idea of like what a strength coach is. Really rowdy person, really loud, really kind of flamboyant, and all these things, loud music, weights clanking, and all this other stuff that you just kind of either, I think it's a fun environment sometimes to think about, but a lot of times that's not necessarily the case. So what were some of those misconceptions that you had, either from, and maybe both, from the strength conditioning industry, the strength conditioning field, and just the idea of being a coach?
Yeah, I think that kind of fits both of those questions, but I think the biggest misconception that I came into the field with was that the level that you work at or the logo on your shirt is indicative of your ability as a coach. I think that we tend to get sold on this idea that we all need to be Power Five football strength coaches in order to be validated, in order for the field to view us as good strength coaches. And I quickly found out that there are a lot of really good coaches that are at much lower levels doing a lot more with a lot less. There are phenomenal coaches that are group of five, that are FCS, that are in the high school realm, that are in the tactical sector. So I think that that mindset that in order for me to be considered a good strength coach, I had to be at the very pinnacle of sport, was something that took me a long time to get over. And that's something that I also kind of see with, sport coaches as well. But it kind of, that narrative gets pushed a lot by people that aren't closely related to strength coaches and that aren't super involved. They just see, well, if you're a strength coach at Ohio State, that's a one-to-one correlation to you're a good strength coach, right? Whereas we know it's not that. That's not the case. The logo on your shirt doesn't really necessarily mean you're good or bad. So it took me a long time to accept that I might not be a Power Five football head strength coach or a Big East head basketball strength coach or whatever. And so that was kind of the biggest misconception that I had coming into the industry. The value of a strength coach has been over time undervalued, but I will say that in the modern day, a lot more people do value strength conditioning, which is good. I mean, a lot of people put honestly, sometimes people put way too much value in strength conditioning in terms of wins and losses. So we put ourselves in kind of an interesting place where we always wanted to be more important until you're the most important thing and you start to get blamed for tactical errors or fatigue, or you go from, oh, I really want people to care about the weight room, but the other side of that sword is, well, people that really care about the weight room are also going to be more likely to inaccurately attribute failures and successes to the weight room, and we know it's a lot more complex than that when it comes to performance. So I think as an industry, we've come a long way, but there are a lot of pitfalls and there are a lot of things you have to watch out for just to navigate the day to day of being a college strength coach.
Yeah, and you mentioned kind of like, how do you figure out what is what can be attributed to a strength coach?
You're completely right. You can keep track of all of the KPIs in the world. Your key performance indicators can all be going up. You can be injury free and you can still lose, right? You can do everything right and still fail as a team and as an organization. So as a strength coach, like you have done your job if the KPIs are going the right way, if people are relatively injury free. But at the end of the day, the big picture of the organization is going to be wins and losses. And, that doesn't necessarily bode well for some strength coaches, and some strength coaches it does, because having your best players available and having the best players usually means you're going to win. I think that where strength coaches have started to try to create more value outside of look at this vertical jump number is kind of taking it upon themselves to learn more about, the science of stress and the way that sport practice stresses people and the way that you can kind of consolidate stressors to allow for a more effective, all-encompassing physical development program that involves the way you plan practice, that involves the way you recover, that involves the way you plan the weight room. And that's a way that strength coaches are creating more value beyond just, oh, we jumped higher, we ran faster. Because at the end of the day, you do need to insulate yourself from the risk that is, if this KPI is good or is higher, it's good. If it's down, it's bad. Because we know that things are contextual and you only control so much of the total load as it is. So there's a lot of strength coaches that have done a lot of work in ways that we as an organization or as a profession can kind of take over more parts of the organization in the terms of the high performance model. So I think there's a lot of different ways that you can try to prove that you do have value, and allow yourself to have success in that way.
What does the future of strength conditioning look like? Is there a future where we don't use the barbell anymore? We don't use these typical implements anymore, where new things get kind of get put into play. Do you see anything on the horizon that is going to drastically change the field?
I honestly, what I'm seeing more of is just people critically thinking and questioning tradition, and not like succumbing to tradition for tradition's sake. So kind of like what you said, people are starting to abandon the Olympic lifts. People are starting to find alternatives to heavy strength training and things like that. And I don't think that that's outlandish. I think that people are just doing a way better job of trying to validate the methods they use and try to validate what they really should be doing. Because I do think that the industry is moving towards trying to be more athlete centric, and trying to genuinely do what's best for the student athlete, especially in the collegiate setting. So you can see that some people are gonna move away from things that, when you do a study, you find that there's not that much of a correlation between your back squat and your sprint speed at a certain percentage of your body weight, right? Like, I think that a lot of people will see that, in the past, and they would say, well, I don't care what the research says, we're still going to back squat. Like, some people aren't doing that. A lot of people are moving away from it. And I think that's why you're going to see more and more people moving away from traditional ideas. A lot of people have been doing really basic programs for a really long time and having success. And more sports science technology is being implemented on a daily basis everywhere. Even, I mean, at Southern Miss, we use force plates and vert units to track jump variables and jump counts on a weekly basis with our volleyball team. So even we're doing that and trying to get as much information as we can. I don't know if there's anything that is going to be majorly groundbreaking. And the reason I say that is because, in order for wide sweeping change to happen, the change has to come from the top down, and you generally can't manage upward, right? So if you're a strength coach and you think things need to change at an organizational level and you report to the head sport coach, that person has to have the desire for the entire system to change. So there are going to be a lot of people that are going to try to implement a high performance model, that are going to try to start to break down the walls and the silos. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be resistance from individuals at the top in certain organizations. So, I mean, it's going to be a slow grind for trying to get more and more people on a truly athlete centric model that really takes into account kind of valuing an athlete's performance over valuing the traditions and the things you've done for 20 years. So it's an uphill battle, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. And that's solely based on the fact that you can't manage upward.
Something that I find really interesting, and it's certainly not, new, but this idea of like focusing on recovery and putting, and it sounds almost like athlete first kind of values, but it really is, it's kind of a win-win for the team and the athlete. Obviously, if you're better recovered, better rested kind of thing, you're able to go out there on game day and do better. So in what ways have the rest and recovery aspect of strength conditioning over your time period as a coach changed?
I think that a big piece of one recovery in general is that it comes from a place of proper planning in the first place. It's making sure that when you go through your weekly plan for practice and for strength conditioning, you are doing things that allow your athlete to recover. I think that there is a lot more um, emphasis now across the industry on the high-low model, consolidation of stressors on the same days to truly allow for people to recover from day to day. In the past, especially when I started out, there were a lot of issues with defining volume, intensity, density, and things like that, and really being able to quantify the loads and the things that you do to your body. And what usually would happen is that um, due to constraints and practices and lifts, you would basically end up with a bunch of days in a row that were just medium. So too slow to really improve, but too long to recover from a day-to-day basis. So I've seen a lot of people try to move towards a high-low model, try to move towards consolidation of stressors, and and for me, that's probably the biggest rock you need to handle first. Is if you plan those things in a way that we know that from a physiology perspective would work better, then you're taking a step in the right direction. I think the second thing is really when you're kind of trying to get your athletes to take recovery more seriously is understanding that like sleep, hydration, and nutrition are your biggest friends in terms of recovery, and not necessarily grabbing a massage gun or the recovery boots or some kind of magic supplement that's going to make you feel better. If you're not sleeping, eating, and hydrating, you're essentially stepping over a dollar to pick up a nickel. If what your go-to is I need a protein bar and a massage gun in order to recover from this practice. No, what you need is the things that people have been preaching for years, which is to go to bed, to eat real food, and to actually drink water. If you can get to a point where your organization is consolidating those stressors and practices and lifts and allowing for real recovery, and your athletes also take recovery habits seriously, you can do a lot of really good things, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think those three right there, nutrition, sleep, and drinking water. And when you said it, it kind of made me have this idea of like when it comes to recovery, preaching and stressing the basics of like what every human does and has to do. And when it comes to training, almost in the opposite way, stressing what most people won't do. And I
Mhm.
think, I never thought about it that way, but I think it's kind of true. It's like, in one way, recovery is like the basics. And obviously, the training aspect, there's a lot of basics involved in that, but there's also kind of this idea of like getting the upper hand on what might be a better thing to do. I don't know. I don't know really. I think the future of recovery definitely is infiltrated with a lot more products and things, just because it is kind of the hot thing right now, and we're seeing a lot of supplements and kind of these all natural things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's kind of the caveat is that we can manage an hour to 2 hours a day, but the rest of that time is on the athlete to make the right decisions. And you always have to remember that even in my job, I deal with between 17 and 23-year olds on the high end of the range, and like those people still aren't developed in a way that they're always going to make the right decision, and you have to also accept that's what you work with. So it can be really easy to get frustrated when people aren't sleeping, people aren't eating. You have to really celebrate the small victories, and try to push people along over time, because you're not just going to get there in a day.
Yeah, that is tough, especially at the high school and college level. You're definitely working with some athletes who may be more interested in the party that night, or maybe more, sometimes it's about, how long do I need to stay up and study for this test or whatever. There's so many different factors when it comes to, when you have school involved. And of course, on a pro level, you have, obviously you have probably a lot more money involved, so you have more opportunities for the crazy and the fun. But the this idea of an athlete and a scholar, it's so crazy because both of those are such massive responsibilities, and you have to, obviously you don't want to put one over the other, but sometimes they kind of do get put over each other, and that's where, a lot of issues can happen.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and even in our role, we have to take that stress into consideration when we're writing programs because, your body doesn't know the difference between stress on the court or stress in the classroom. So even just those two things, trying to balance, the athlete and the student, like even as a strength coach, I have to be cognizant of the fact that if finals are coming up, people are going to struggle to perform, and that's a big thing for me is like, do you plan your deload weeks for your finals weeks? Do you take those little things into consideration to make a huge impact? Because I think that's super important. And I know that there's some other strength coaches that think that's important too. So, you can have a little bit of an impact on that as well.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like being more aware of the athlete, more aware of just the whole situation that's going on, and I think that would be a massive step in the right direction. But looking forward into the future of the field of strength conditioning, how do you see, or rather, what changes would you want to see, in the next 10, 20 years in the field?
Yeah, I mean, I would love for people to, or especially in the United States, right? Because this is something that happens overseas a lot and has happened for a long time, is to appoint high performance managers to be over top of the entire organization that genuinely understand stress in the human body and genuinely understand how each piece of an organization affects each other. I think that traditionally, that role goes to your head coach, and oftentimes your head coach is an expert in the sport and nothing else. And I think that it would be really beneficial for a lot of people to really take that high performance model and the high performance role and put someone on top of an organization and genuinely give them the authority to make decisions across the board when it comes to how you practice, when it comes to how you train in the weight room, when it comes to how your nutrition staff does things. I would love to see that happen in the United States because I think that we have a really weird model the way we do things, because we value sport coaches at a really high level for a good reason because they are experts in their sport, but we also give them power over everything in a lot of situations. And I think a lot of times that can cause a lot of issues because you get experts in the field, or you want to hire experts and you bring them in and then you micromanage them, or you tell them to do things that don't make sense. I think it would be really beneficial for the industry if we were able to have people in roles on the top of organizations that understand just general human stress. And and even before that, having strength conditioning professionals that leave coaching on the floor to go into administrative roles, so that there are strength coaches that have representation at the highest levels of organizations and academics as well, so that we can have a seat at the table and not always fighting an uphill battle to do just the basic right things. I don't think that the way the industry is going, the things that are going to take it forward are going to be your new toy, your new technology, your new training method. It's going to be putting people in positions that allow them to make decisions that genuinely benefit the student athlete. I personally would like to see that as the next steps in our industry.
Yeah, I think that would be definitely an interesting take on things. And you mentioned people, and I think it comes back to people because as much technology as we can implement, and you see it in so many other fields with technology taking over. I think the human to human relationship and human to human contact is, you can't, I don't think you can match that with a robot or with technology. I think it has to be, a face to face, a person having a conversation, understanding what a person actually goes through. I think that's a big aspect to coaching and teaching and leading. And I don't think a technology can take the place of a human in that perspective.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Thanks for coming on and joining me on the weight room. And before we go, if you want to just let people know where they can find you on social media and stuff, that'd be great.
I think my Twitter is Coach Dan Disney, and I think that my Instagram is Daniel Disney or Dan Disney. I don't know. I honestly don't remember what the actual handle is, but I'm pretty active on Twitter. That's kind of where I get to show a lot of my personality that I don't usually get to do on the regular daily basis of my life. But yeah, you can find me anywhere on there. So I appreciate you bringing me on to talk a little bit, and hope I didn't get too out of bounds on you.
No, it was great.